Jason Bohr, President and CEO of Lignite Energy Council. Thanks for waiting, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm just glad that we never had to deal with any of that in NDSU. I think the arguments for state schools and land-grant universities just keep getting stronger.
Yeah, we're not seeing much of that, are we, in our region, which is telling, that's for sure. Lot to talk about. I want to start with the EPA because it seems like there is obviously the EPA has been no friend of your industry for a long, long time, but there seems to be something in the water where they are doubling down. What exactly is going on? Highlight some of the stuff they're throwing at you right now.
Yeah, double, triple, quadrupling down on things that have no scientific basis, no health benefits, and will impact reliability. The two big ones are carbon dioxide rule and MATS rule. There's also things like regional haze, coal combustion residuals. Really what the administration is doing is recognizing the uncertainties that election brings. They might lose the election. They're trying to push a lot of things out the door in a time frame that makes it impossible for an incoming administration to make changes. So they're driven by political expediency instead of the science, which has led to really some unforced errors on their part in some of the calculations, the studies, and the investment they made to get these rules done correctly. So they've issued a bunch of rules. All of them fail to account for advancements in technology or the status of technology, and none of them account for grid reliability challenges. So it's they're moving really quick because they think they have to move really quick, and the result is a mishmash of rules, each one more damaging than the last.
Are these a surprise, or have you been preparing for these for a long time?
No, we've been aware that these are on the horizon for a very long time. In fact, on regional haze, we've been working on our response to regional haze for 3 years, doing our own reliability or our own visibility modeling, talking to the experts, doing technology review, because regional haze is a rule in which they are required to make periodic adjustments. So we knew this was coming, and trying to make sure that what we are communicating is the truth and that it is backed up by science, and that we can trust the science that demonstrates in North Dakota when visibility is impaired, it is impaired by outside wildfires and not electricity generation.
I know why the Lignite Energy Council and its members are concerned about this, but why should everyday North Dakotans pay attention here? What does it mean to them?
Well, on the mercury rule, on carbon rule, the EPA didn't consider reliability challenges. So they're issuing rules that modeling indicates are going to take electricity generation facilities off the grid. That is going to increase reliability risks, increase the risk of a blackout, and the carbon rule in particular is billions upon billions of dollars are going to be required to comply with that. So costs are going to go up, reliability is going to go down. We all should care about those things. Yeah,
no kidding. All right, more with Jason Bohr after a short time out here. What do you do about it? Do you say we're opting out, we're not going to comply? Is that feasible? How do you go about? You go to court again? Because there has been some success in the courts on stopping some of the stuff that started back in the Obama years. More on that with Jason Bohr from the Lignite Energy Council next. Back in What's on Your Mind, 20 past the hour. Big giant target on the back of North Dakota coal has been for a long, long time, and this climate hoax push is coming from, really, a lot of this was Obama-era stuff. It's been continued by the Bernie Sanders wing in the Congress, and certainly by the Biden administration as well, and there's a barrage of it coming now. Question before the break is the industry able to say, we're not going to comply? We're just opting out of this?
No, that's not something that the industry is able to do. This is essentially the law of the land, and we are obligated to figure out a way to comply or shut down. Those are the choices before us. The only way to challenge the inevitability of this is to go to the Supreme Court or go into the court system and say, this is wrong. This was done illegally. It failed to consider X, Y, Z, and therefore this rule should be blocked from going into effect. That was able to be done with the original Clean Power Plan because that one was so egregious and so flawed.
Punitive, by the way, to North Dakota, too. Well, I mean, completely punitive and singling out states like North Dakota.
Right, and that was part of the demonstration that the court could see that this is purely a political exercise and not related to the health and welfare of the population. And I think on both mercury and carbon, that's what you're going to see, is the courts looking at these and say, the statute says X, you're requiring Y, and you're ignoring what the statute says. So we're going to put a stop to enforcement here. And I really do think that's what you're going to see on these. But the court battle, under great circumstances, is still nearly a year long. Under worse circumstances, it can be 5-6 years long, and by the time you win in the court, you've already had to shut down your power plants. And that's what happened to many folks in the power industry the first time, or the most recent time, that EPA issued regulations like this. People went to court, and while they were waiting for a court victory, which finally came by the Supreme Court, they had to shut down anyway.
What kind of money are we talking about as far as the court battle, and where does that money come from, Jason?
It's millions upon millions of dollars, and it comes from all sorts of places. Industry itself is, we've been preparing for this. So we in the Lignite Council, we've been spending money for years preparing for these, as have our members of the Lignite Energy Council. They've been preparing their own legal responses. And then one of the great things that we've been able to achieve over the past decade with the state of North Dakota is a true partnership that is outlined in statute, that the Industrial Commission and industry work together to protect the industry. And we were able to go back in this last legislative session and get an additional $3 million appropriated to the Industrial Commission for these lawsuits. So it's really a multi-party partnership, being able to say the state's going to protect its sovereignty, the Lignite Energy Council is going to protect the shared interests, and the industry are going to talk about their specific challenges at their power plants. But it is a lot of money for all three of those entities.
There's a loud minority out there these days yelling and screaming all kinds of things. And I hear some of them suggesting that the Lignite Energy Council, or the industry in general in North Dakota, the coal industry, are caving to the feds on this and not pushing back hard enough. What do you say to that accusation?
Yeah, I don't even know what that means. I mean, are people caving when you pay your taxes? Are you caving when you obey the law? This is the law. That's really all it comes down to. Is we're required to do these things, and there is no alternative other than to fight it through the courts, and that's just the honest truth. Whatever law you don't like for the federal government, you tend to obey it anyway because you don't want to go to jail.
What role will carbon capture play in mitigating some of this contagion that's coming from the government?
I think it does two things. It gives us an economic opportunity, and that's really the way we're looking at it, is aside from what's going on with the EPA, this is an opportunity for us to add a new revenue stream. Carbon dioxide is a valuable commodity. The oil industry purchases it in large quantities. We make the most of it of anybody in North Dakota, so we see a market out there. Now, we've been working on this for 30 years to develop that market. The EPA has been trying to regulate CO2 for less time than we've been trying to monetize it. That ought to tell you something. We started down this road of seeing an opportunity on this CO2 stuff. They're coming at it from a completely different perspective. They're concerned about the climate, and so are a lot of people. But we see an economic opportunity here, and there's a way for us to get to that economic opportunity that satisfies what the EPA is asking as well. That's a win for everybody.
The carbon capture we hear most about is related to the effort, Summit Carbon Solutions, to take CO2 off of ethanol plants and sequester it in North Dakota. What's the Lignite Energy Council's position on that project?
Yeah, I know. I understand what they're doing, and that really we don't have a position on that. They're not one of our members. What they are trying to do is build a business case. They see opportunity in North Dakota because North Dakota has done a great job of creating regulatory certainty for CO2. But that project really doesn't have anything to do with us, so I don't really have too much to say about it.
Yet you have like-minded enemies, so to speak, right? I mean, the Lignite Energy Council did do some work in the last legislative session that staved off some of the projects or proposals that were directly targeting this project. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. And our interest in those bills was to create good policy. And for whatever reason, that project was targeted by different legislators who objected to whatever. And the solutions that these legislators proposed were bad policy for the state of North Dakota. And that was our interest in to say, have whatever opinion you want about this project, but you can't screw up the policy of the state of North Dakota. You can't screw up things that we've been working on for 30 years because you don't like a certain project. That's bad governance. And our vision remains CO2 going into the oil field for enhanced oil recovery. That is the golden goose for North Dakota for the next 50 years. So that was at risk by people who didn't like an individual project. And that was just an outcome that was going to be bad for our industry in particular.
Makes sense.
This was like friendly fire, and we opposed it.
Only a few seconds left, but I this onslaught that is coming at you, I think, awakens a lot of people. What can we do to help? What can the average person do out there to help?
Lignite.com/fight-EPA is the place to go. We're putting together messages of support for our industry that will be delivered to the President of the United States, as well as provide ammunition for our congressional delegation when they're doing hearings, when they're talking to EPA administrators, to be able to say, we're representing the voice of these people. And these people are concerned that the actions you are taking are illegal, unethical, and nonsensical. No relation to health of the human population. So lignite.com/fight-the-EPA gets you a chance to put your name on the record as a supporter of the industry.
That's easy for us to do. It takes a few seconds, and I'll share that on my social media today as well. Lignite.com/fight-the-EPA. Lignite.com/fight-the-EPA. Put your name on that. The more signers, the bigger the impact. Jason, thanks for the update. Keep fighting, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks for the time.
President and CEO of the Lignite Energy Council. Great North Dakota energy industry.